And I wanted to know the first time we actually see Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep at that table in the restaurant. You follow her on a long tracking shot from the moment she knocks over the chair to the table. And I'm curious, as a filmmaker and a storyteller, what you wanted to convey in that long, unbroken tracking shot before you edited and made a cut.
Well, I did a lot of coverage on that scene. I had over-shoulder shots, over Tom to Meryl, over Meryl to Tom. I had singles. I spent the whole day covering it. But when I shot the master, meaning I shot the whole scene in one shot, I realized that there was something that the camera that eventually came around and created a kind of, parody between Ben Bradley and Katherine Graham. Ben Bradley was on the left of the screen and Katherine Graham was on the right of the screen. It was a very equal and fair shot that showed the dynamic of their relationship. And when I had first initially put the scene together, and I did it conventionally with cuts, it didn't ring true as much as a kind of theatrical stage play where the audience just sits there and they do all the editing. You go to a play and you're the editor. You decide who to look at and when to look at them. When an actor compels you to pay attention to them, you watch them more than the other actor. And I felt should be more like theater. When they first meet, we should see the theater of that dynamic between the publisher of the Post and the editor of the Post having this breakfast where they don't agree on very much. And I thought it was much stronger to let them just play the hell out of the scene in a two-shot.
It was an amazing scene. Now, on May 25th of this year, you went to the Post with Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks, and you were in these editorial meetings. And I think it's so cool. I wrote a whole story about it in D.C. I was curious what you learned from a 2017 newsroom at the Washington Post that you utilized for a 1971 storyline.
I think it was, I was looking around the room, and it's interesting that in a movie, if I hadn't gone to the Washington Post to witness them putting the day's news up on their feet, which now, because it's digital and because it's online, you have to have these meetings every couple of hours. In the old days, they would have, I presume, one meeting for that edition and then another meeting for the next edition, for the late edition. But this was different. If I was shooting the scene, I'd have every single reporter and staff editor in that room paying rapt attention to the editor, just not taking their eyes off the editor. It doesn't work that way in real life. Everybody has their phones out, but it's not that they're not paying attention. They're sourcing, they're getting confirmation for other stories that might go into the paper, that might contribute to when it comes their turn to talk about what they're putting up on the site or in the paper that day. They're compiling all of that. It's a lot of people looking down, making notes, and that gave me I said, when we actually shoot these scenes, everybody should be doing their own thing. Yeah. They don't all have to be completely, praying at the feet of Ben Bradley. They've got their other jobs to do for Ben and for Katherine Graham, but they've got their own work to do.
It's been an incredible year for celluloid. I mean, we have seen so many amazing films shot on film. Dunkirk, Star Wars, this movie, Phantom Thread. But film, there's something magical about it. And watching the way Kaminsky works that camera, it's beautiful. I'm curious, just now that we've seen so many films going into a digital age, what is it about film that still, in your opinion, is so magical, and why you shot the Post on 35 and continuing to do that?
Well, digital photography is a science, and film photography is a chemical miracle. And when I say chemical miracle, it is. You never quite know what you're going to get after the film takes a bath and exposes the positive from the negative. And when you get to see the print based on your negative, there's a lot of things that surprises me, and it always looks different, always looks real. There's grain, number one, and the grain is always moving. It's swimming, which means that even in a still life of, let's say, a flower on a table, that flower is alive even though it's not moving, because the film itself,
3D almost.
The image is alive, and that's the difference.
It's so cool.
It is cool.
Yeah, thank you so much for talking to me. I had
Thank you.
Yeah, and John Williams' score.
Oh, his score it's subtle on this.
Yeah,
very
you know
subtle.
what I love was the audio match cut you had when it went from the guns in Vietnam to the helicopter spin.
I love you notice this stuff.
I
man.
thought that shot was so cool, and I was like,
Thank you.
And then when that kid goes up to get the note from the New York Times, and the camera's like right down the hallway.
Right with
it.
him.
Was just so good.
Oh, thank you so much.
No, it was an honor to meet you
appreciate
again.
it.
Thank you so much.
It's our
really
fourth
good
time.
Yeah, I know. It's so
our fourth movie we've talked
thank you,
about.
Mr. Spielberg. I'll see you in DC for the premiere.
yo-
Did you guys did they really print out the papers for you guys on set?
We were looking at the Pentagon Papers in that big scene in Ben
Really?
Bradley's house. Yes, we were working with the copies of the Pentagon Papers, and we're reading them because they're really intriguing and they're very readable, actually.
Yeah.
I know that it's published. You can just buy it on Amazon or wherever. And but they're very readable. They're reports from Vietnam, or they're reports about Vietnam, because sometimes they're written over many years, and they go back into the history of that engagement, even back to the French engagement there. It's just a survey of the effort over there and the question of why are we there, what's happening, and where's it leading.
I'm going to get nerdy with you for 1 second, hypothetically speaking. For some reason, I want to see Saul walk into that scene as a lawyer, as Jesse Plemons' character, who's obviously also in Breaking Bad. What do you think Saul's advice would have been about publishing the papers?
Oh, hell yeah. Saul would have been, let's go. I think not for the right reasons, because it'll blow us up. We're going to be in the press because we're doing this. Let's go to jail. Come on. We'll be worth a lot of money after that.
Someone get Vince Gilligan on the phone.
He would have been all for creating a ruckus. So opposite of what a real lawyer would do. A real corporate lawyer would say, don't publish.
I'm sensing a Breaking Bad prequel
Yes,
back to
I think so.
1971.
Or maybe Saul in the future works for a paper, and I don't know.
Vince Gilligan.
Moves to Washington.
Yeah. Specifically, we mentioned Breaking Bad. That was shot on film. Slovis shot
That's right.
35
That's
millimeter.
right. Yes.
Spielberg shooting 35 millimeter here,
know.
and nothing looks like better than that. I'm
Yeah.
curious, as actors working on film, if that goes into your performance at all, thinking about the film camera, the way it captures you with the grain. As actors, what do you feel?
I mean,
about
I can't alter my physical presence too much.
Yes, you can.
A little bit, but not too much to adapt
Sure.
to something like that. It's a wonderful thing to shoot on film. I love film for the reasons that Stephen delineated the other night. That film is alive. It's like an organic being as opposed to digital's look, and it really involves you more as a viewer because of that.
I agree.
It made me act faster, because in the days of digital, the cameras just keep running, and
Yeah.
you'll do notes, or someone will come into it, and you have all the time in the world. But you see, the focus guy who's loading, he's looking at the camera going,
You've run out of
and
time.
you sort of you feel the pressure of, like, a
to it.
1,000-foot mag coming to an end, and you want to get
Get to it.
And
Yeah.
forgive me if I'm wrong on this, but Ellsberg's obviously still alive.
Yeah.
Did you meet with Dan? Like, what were your conversations like with him, and what did you talk to him about?
incredibly intense. But as I've said earlier, what was incredible, and the first time I've ever been able to do this, although having played real people in the past, was to map exactly what he was doing on these particular days, how he felt, and what was going through his mind. Like, on this moment, how did you feel on this? It was incredible to have. It was a real treasure trove.
Congratulations to you both. I have a filmmaking question for you. I randomly had seen Spielberg in the hallway, and I was nerding out because there's a really cool shot where we see a picture of you and Tom Hanks with Jackie Kennedy and John F. Kennedy.
Yes.
And you guys are in the picture as with your friends. And I'm curious, when you do that, do you go to a photo shoot day and reenact it?
That was literally something I did in between a wardrobe fitting and a wig test, and they just threw me up against a white wall and took a picture, and then cropped it out and
Wow,
put
and
my
it's the real
face in.
photo, too,
It's the real
right?
photo of them, and they just put our faces.
That is
They put
so
Tom and- Yeah, it was pretty
cool.
cool. I wish they would give me that.
Yeah, that's what you should get.
I gotta make a call.
Ask somebody about that.
Just call Spielberg.
You know what?
He's
I'm
down the
going to.
hall. Just yell.
Steven!
What do you put Spielberg in your phone as? SS or like S-Man?
I call the man Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
I call him Stevie.
She calls him Stevie.
Stevie.
She does. She doesn't.
What does he think of the name Stevie?
She doesn't.
He's actually delightful. He'd probably be fine. I remember I was like, Steven, is that a cigar? And he just popped me right on the head
Yeah.
with it. He's very playful. He's
One
fun.
of my favorite things about this film is just the bravery quality of Meryl's character. I mean, everybody's character specifically, but when she walks in those rooms with all those men, and you could just see them looking down upon her, and like the idea how they think about her, just having her have that arc at the end is just so incredible. And I'm just curious what that means as actresses in this business, seeing that happen in this film, even though it took place in 1971, but it means so much today as well.
It occurs to me right now, hearing you say that, that what I hope it means is that somebody like you would look at somebody like me walking into a room full of men and think I was brave.
Of course I would.
Because of course it hasn't changed very much.
Yeah.
Most of the rooms we walk into are of that dynamic, and
Which is sad.
yeah, and just true. So for
And
women
enraging,
seeing that
too.
moment, I don't necessarily see a brave woman walking into a room. I
see a
see a
woman.
woman walking into
Woman,
any room.
yeah.
Right.
So for us, it feels like, oh shit.
There's
Oh, excuse me. Oh shoot, we got a long way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but a movie like this, can you talk about the power of cinema and what you think
Yes.
change can be brought? I mean, a story that took place 46 years ago,
Yeah.
still having still having things that are timely today. But what do you think about cinema that's so powerful to teach
Well, I always think anytime you have an an artistic endeavor that can actually, and I think they all do in some respects, any artistic, whether it's a movie or a play or a piece of music, it has an incredible opportunity to make a big emotional impact, and I certainly think this does too. I haven't seen it, so I can't speak to it really. So
But
you
I
should ask
can.
Carrie.
But Steven Spielberg's films have that kind of reach. They play all over the country. This isn't a movie that's going to just play on the coast. This is going to play everywhere. My family in the Midwest is going to see this movie, not just because I'm in it. And hopefully that can inspire. Hopefully art provides middle ground for people to meet and have difficult conversations.
You know, Spielberg said in an interview recently that fear is his fuel. So, like,
yeah.
if he's scared about something, he takes it on. I'm wondering, as actresses, like, when you read a script, when you're scared of something, does that mean you want to do it?
Sometimes, yes.
Yes.
And how do you get over that hump, of being scared?
I just bury myself in the preparing,
Yeah,
in the
that's a good
preparation.
answer.
I just think about just do one like you approach every day if you really need to.
Yeah.
Just put one foot in front of the other. Just do this thing right now. Just think about this particular scene or this. And I think it was something I even read Meryl Streep say years ago, which was just like, just play the unit of the scene. You can't play the unit of this scene with everything and also trying to track every little moment that you've had leading up to this. You can only play, because that's often what happens. You can have an incredibly traumatic conversation on the phone with a friend and then walk into a room where you have to have a different kind of conversation. And many people in the room will have no idea you just had an upsetting conversation. So you don't always try to infuse every moment with all of the, the grist for the mill that you've been, dealing with in your day. So playing the unit of the scene is something I think about a lot, which is sometimes complicated because you want to do it. You want to bring it all. You want to bring everything into the moment, which I think can just flood it, and then it becomes unspecific and terrible.
There's these scenes that are just shocking when you see Meryl Streep walk into a room just full of men, and then just the idea of specifically your character's talking down to her, talking about like how she's not essentially worthy of being there. She got it passed down from her father. I'm just curious, can you talk about the bravery aspect of her character and what you saw from that arc that she took in this role, and kind of what that means for audiences today to see that character on screen in that environment?
I think it's tough to imagine what it must have been like in 1971, 46 years ago, what it must have been like to be a woman who was a head of an organization like that, when women just simply didn't hold those positions for the most part. It's one thing to try to imagine it now, when it's still very rare, but 46 years ago, incredibly rare. And it must have been so intimidating for Kay Graham. Now, granted, Kay Graham herself came from a pretty privileged background, but still, it wouldn't matter. I've heard Meryl herself talk about how some of that insecurity was really baked into the character of Kay, and perhaps a lot of women in that time, which is where so much of that uncertainty comes from.
I think it was something I responded to immediately in the script. This is she's a reluctant hero. It's really interesting.
She's a superhero.
She is not approaching this through a contemporary lens of feminism. She is part of a culture that for the first 200 years of this country, we dismissed the talents of half of the people.
Yeah.
And it's an incredibly difficult decision without being thought as a person who doesn't have the legitimacy to make a decision. I mean, it's an extraordinary thing.
Wrap me. One quick filmmaking question. On the phone scenes, are you really on the phone with anybody when you shoot those scenes when you're on the phone?
We're really on the phone, though.
It's very funny.
Me, Bradley, Tom.
Hank's in his shorts.
Brent, a couple of others. We're all gathered in a little tent, like a
an ice
camping
fishing tent.
We're gathered in a tent, and we all have different phones in our hand while they're shooting Meryl's stuff.
And
Really? Is that you being serious?
Yeah, yeah, and we're in shorts, and we're like, and we're on a phone thing with her, and somebody has a little iPad, with a monitor of her.
That's unbelievable. Oh my God. That was the best answer I've gotten all day. That was so cool to hear that. Well, nice to see you guys.